As Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnik is wont to do, he made headlines after an appearance on the All In podcast.
Let's say Social Security didn't send out their checks this month. My mother-in-law, who's 94, she wouldn't call and complain. I would never allow, if I can stand it, to not pay somebody who retired at 65 their benefits.
This messaging understands that Social Security and entitlements more broadly are considered the third rail of politics, but it's clear that the Trump administration doesn't understand why. How schizophrenic is it, the idea that the current beneficiaries of Social Security, they can afford a missed payment, but future ones don't? This is also not borne out in the data. 27% of seniors today have no other income for Social Security. In a poll by Bankrate, they found that half of all boomers say that they will be very reliant on Social Security, but that number goes increasingly downwards. Why? Because the 22% of millennials who say that they'll be very reliant on Social Security are the minority, whereas the rest of us understand it won't be there. In just 8 years, when Social Security hits insolvency, that's a 23% across the board benefit cut. And so this is my issue, Christian, with the idea of we have to protect Social Security at all costs. God forbid we increase the retirement age 23% when that's how much life expectancy has increased since that retirement age was set. They'd rather, rob from the children to pay. Why would you have a system where the 94-year-old mother-in-law, who statistically speaking does actually rely on expecting that benefit today, when our generation, we make clear 73% of non-retired folks know they won't receive their promised benefits because we won't, because the Trump administration's official policy is do nothing and let that insolvency hit.
Tiana, I'm going to put aside the policy points of your argument because I don't disagree with you at all there. I want to ask you about sort of the messaging behind what Lutnik and Scott Bessent at Treasury and even Donald Trump are saying, because it seems to me like they're telling voters, hey, stick with our plan because down the line it's going to be so much better for you. Ignore the short-term pain. Ignore grandma maybe missing one Social Security check. Correct me if I'm wrong. This sounds exactly like what Joe Biden was saying, which failed to resonate with voters. So do you think this is a strategic miscalculation, perhaps just an unseen pitfall of Trump's agenda being implemented, or what the hell is the White House doing here?
Absolutely, when the return on the investment is non-existent, right?
Yeah.
We know the voters they're willing to take a short-term hit for some long-term strategies. We see that with tariffing China. Voters saw COVID and they understand China is a threat. They say, okay, we will take slightly increased prices if it means decoupling from China. When Lutnik is lying, saying that, it's just the waste, fraud, and abuse in Social Security that is the reason why it's going up. Again, not borne out in the data. In order to stave off insolvency without spending reform, payroll taxes would need to rise by at least 25%. Another way to balance the budget without touching entitlements or defense would require decimating non-defense discretionary by 90%. So no, it's not waste, fraud, and abuse. It's the fact that a bunch of boomers decided not to have kids, and you have a smaller number of workers paying into those retirees, and you never updated the age for the reality that people live so much longer. They live 15 years longer on average than they did when Social Security was originally passed. It's just, and I understand my faction of the GOP lost, right? Nikki Haley was expressly running in that 2024 primary on, no, we need to touch Social Security if we want to have any sort of means-tested retirement program for the least privileged. I think we all recognize that. We don't want seniors being homeless. But why should I expect a payout from the government when instead I could spend money in my 401k that has orders of magnitude times the investment?
Yeah. It's definitely, I think, like you've mentioned, a strategic error and one that voters probably in the midterm elections won't forget about.
Christian, what's the top story you're following?